ESPN's Football Power Index rankings ranked the Steelers pretty low. Was it way too low? Just right? We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter, here today with Tony Serino. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you're enjoying it. Hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content, as well as our bonus episodes and breaking news updates. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. If you want to help us out, go on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. You get a shout at the end of the show. Joining me today is Tony Serino, the man himself from AFC North Talk and former co-host with me on this very show. Tony, what's happening?
Happy to be here. We got a lot to get to today. We got some important jersey number stuff to get to later on in the show, but I'm excited to be here.
We do have some, and this was something that we were all very sad about. You were supposed to be on the show last week. You had work, important things, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I should have called it off, honestly, because the jersey number talk is far more important than any of,
any occupation or making money or things like that.
Overrated. Giving George Pickens 14.
Say the takes, but hey, don't you start. That's for the later segment. All right, we're gonna get there. But let's talk about today's topic, and this is looking back at ESPN's Football Power Index rankings. Now, if someone doesn't know what that is, this is just ESPN's way of predicting how strong teams will be against each other on a neutral field, just based off their roster, what they know of them, and how these teams will match up. Now, how this works is that ESPN assigns them a number that's basically, if it's positive, this is how many teams you would beat the average NFL team by.
How many points? Yeah. How many points you would be favored by?
Yeah. How many points you should be favored by, going into a game, again, on a neutral field, not even factoring in home and away situations. If you have a negative FPI, of course, that means that you have that's somebody you would lose by in a game or you'd be favored against. And the Steelers came in 26th ranking in the NFL, dead last of all AFC North teams. They are ranking their FPI is a negative 7.5. So the ESPN is saying that to the average NFL team, the Steelers would be not favored. The other team would be favored by 7.5 points. And I know this sounds all weird, and you're like, Chris, what does that even mean? How does that even apply anything? But what's interesting to me about this, to Tony, is all the teams that are ahead of the Steelers, and we'll also get to the comparisons to those. The Carolina Panthers are ahead of the Steelers, the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles with their draft, I kind of get. And, the New England Patriots, the Minnesota Vikings are very high up on this list. The Cleveland Browns are very high up on this list. The Arizona Cardinals, the Indianapolis Colts. All these teams that I'm just like, I get behind Rams, Chiefs, Buccaneers, even Chargers because of their roster. I get that. But is this like another sign of disrespect to the Steelers that's being thrown from ESPN's way here?
It's certainly strange to me because, we've been talking on AFC North Talk, and all my co-hosts agree with me on this, that the Steelers without Ben Roethlisberger might upgrade at quarterback. With Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, given where Ben Roethlisberger left off, and this is no disrespect to who Ben Roethlisberger was throughout his entire career, a Hall of Famer, he's going to go in right away. But he did not play well last season, right? And his limitations led to limitations throughout the offense. This is an offense that's going to bring in, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky, they're going to bring in someone who can just move the pocket a little more, right? You hope to have a player who's going to be able to maneuver, to extend plays, and to do more of the ad-lib that we saw that Ben Roethlisberger do at the end of last season. And so that's why, look, I get that if you took a 10,000-foot view of this and said, oh, the Steelers lost a Hall of Fame quarterback, they're going to be way worse. I get that take. But when I saw NFL's FPI or ESPN's FPI, where they're really going into the analytics of this and digging into the advanced numbers and trying to project out how these teams are going to be given the rosters that they have today, I am surprised that this number is so low because they must not be taking into account. They must be saying the Steelers are going to be dramatically worse at quarterback next year. And that, to me, that just doesn't jive with what I saw from Ben Roethlisberger and the projections of Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky.
Now, this is an interesting part of this conversation, and it's twofold a bit for me, because I think a lot of people would agree with me. And it's funny, a lot of people hate the fact that whenever I criticize Ben Roethlisberger on this show, or say that he wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread last year. And I say he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He was a great player, great quarterback for quite some time. Last year, he just didn't have it. And he was a liability more often than he was an asset. But in saying all of that, I think you and I can agree that there was definitely a bit of a vendetta put on the Pittsburgh Steelers by more national media members because of Ben Roethlisberger, or at least a more negative tint to their beliefs in the team, and as far as how far that they'll go, or what they should get credit for. Even like when they went 11-0 that year, as soon as they were 3-0, everyone said this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. And then after they lost like several starters, and then they lost their first game, like, aha, we told you they weren't real once they were 11-1. And it's true. And I thought a lot of that was because of Ben Roethlisberger, and because there was just this disdain towards him. But you look at this FPI ranking, and it's like, man, like if that was really the psychology, if that was really the reason for that, you'd think that they'd be like, hey, no, we like the Steelers now. Let's bump them up a little bit.
I see, and we're on the same. Yeah, we're absolutely on the same page here. I would have expected, especially the analytics crew, right, the PFFs of the world, right, the Football Outsiders of the world, all the people that yes, I mean, they remember. Pro Football Focus wrote an article right after the Steelers went 11-0, and they said the Steelers are the worst 11-0 team of all time. Of all time. So, yeah, I mean, like, it was a very strange – and I think it's the way the Steelers were winning. That Ben Roethlisberger wasn't playing well, and the Steelers were winning in spite of that. And it's a very Mike Tomlin-esque trait of this team, right, which is that, he has been able to, over the last 4 years now, take what has been certainly not above average quarterback play, whether you want to say Ben Roethlisberger was average, below average, bad, however you want to put it, right? Mike Tomlin took teams that had sub quarterback play to 8-8 back with Mason and Duck, and then 11-0 and all the way on their way to 12-4, and then 9-7-1. And so, I think that there were a lot of people in the analytics community that looked at that and said, like, they're an anti-analytics team. Like, they're doing, the regression has to come. That, they're doing this the wrong way. Eventually, they'll get their comeuppance, and it never happened. And now I think they look at a world where, well, the Steelers might get an upgrade at quarterback, but who cares? Because they still have to pay for what they did the last 3 years.
It might be that. It might just be like hey, we thought that you would bottom out. I mean, and this was said for a long time. I mean, even people in Pittsburgh that aren't a part of the analytics community, like the Mark Maddens of the world, people would say Steelers are going to have a 4-win season, a 5-win season, a 6-win season for the longest time. People swore that was coming. Heck, right here in the Locked On Podcast Network, if y'all would ever listen to our big roundtables where I would do with Jeff from Locked On Browns, Jake and James from Locked On Bengals, and Kevin from Locked On Ravens, for the past 3 or 4 years, every time we do it, the Steelers, they'll finish 4th, they'll be done. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I'm not saying that they'll win the division. I'm just telling you they're going to be in the hunt at the end of the season. And for the past 3-4 years, that's been the case. And
it's so funny how they just, every year it's the same story, which is this time of the year, everyone just starts to convince themselves like, well, this is the year. This is the year the Steelers organization finally falls apart, right? It's just, every year and then as soon as the ball gets kicked off in September, they start saying, oh, actually, we got that one a bit wrong. I mean, even last year, the Steelers opened the year off. They beat Buffalo. Yeah, same way on AFC North Talk. It's the offseason time when everyone convinces themselves this is the year the Steelers made these bad choices. They had a bad free agency, bad draft, bad everything. And it's all going to come to pass in the regular season. And then we get to regular season time, and nope, things are just fine in Pittsburgh.
It's so bizarre to me. I want to look more at these in a little bit. We're going to take a break, and we come back. I want to talk about jersey numbers for these rookies, because if anyone doesn't know, Tony is the aficionado on what jersey numbers mean, how they relate to power rankings, and we'll go over that to how these rookies' careers might play out. But we're going to also revisit this and compare this to the Steelers and other teams to each other to see what ESPN Football Power Index rankings have them as. We will be talking about that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. And let me tell y'all, I even just had one of these. The new birthday cake Built Puffs are amazing. They're the lightest of light, and they taste awesome. If you're a person who you like Built Bar, but hey, maybe they're a little too chewy for you, these are the perfect ones because the puffs are so easy on you. They taste like birthday cake frosting. If you just took your finger, stuck it in the old birthday cake frosting box, and just kept eating it and eating it and eating it, except then you realize, oh man, I just ate like 400 calories of sugar. This one birthday cake puff is 150 calories and also gets you 16 grams of protein because it's going to help fill you up, keep you light though, and keep you going on your day. And again, they taste amazing. They're covered in 100% real chocolate. And in fact, this is white chocolate. So if you want to try that out, that makes it even more awesome. And remember, Built Puffs are like the first ever protein infused marshmallows. That's what makes them taste amazing and be great for you at the same time. So go to built.com, check out their new birthday cake puffs, and have them delivered right to your door by using the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED 15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order of Built Bars or Built Puffs when you get them from built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino, and we're talking about rookie jersey numbers. Because, again, if you've listened to this show for a long time, you know back when Tony was a co-host with me and we would talk about this a lot, Tony would give you legitimate reasons why a certain player was going to be a bust or not based off of their jersey numbers. Yeah. And we have all 7 of the Steelers rookies jersey numbers. So we're going to get your thoughts. We're going to go in backwards order. We're going to go from the last draft picks to the first.
Okay.
Starting with Chris Oladikin.
Yeah.
Number 5, Josh Dobbs.
The Steelers have started to do this, right? Where they replaced Marquise Pouncey with Kendrick Green, and they gave him 53.
Yeah.
So it has been a weird thing where it's just like they're just basically giving out like, oh, you're actually replacing this player, so you get their number. I don't have a problem with it. I will say, though, I would have liked another player in this draft to get this number. I know it's going to come as a shock to some people, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
We'll talk about that when we get there. All right. Linebacker, Mark Robinson gets number 93.
It's an okay number for an inside. Look, if he's going to be an inside linebacker, it's an okay number.
Right.
Joe Schobert. Yeah, Joe Schobert wore it. Before that, Jason World, I remember, wore 93.
Yeah.
He was an edge rusher. It's not a terrible number. Obviously 98 was available to be given out. They gave that, we'll talk about the player they gave 98. We'll talk about that in a second. This is almost a Benny Snell, Justin Lane situation where it's like you could have just flipped those two players. And by the way, not to toot my own horn here, but I did say like those two players were kind of, given a disadvantage with their numbers. If they just flipped those numbers, both players might have turned out to be better players, but instead here we are. Both guys.
You did call out that when Benny Snell got his number, Justice Lane is like, this just doesn't seem right. Yeah, give him this number. Switch those numbers, and you got 2 All Pros. And now instead you have 2 busts, and you called it. They have been busts. I mean, and it's tough to say a 4th rounder is a bust. It's just like, hey, this 4th rounder didn't work. 3rd rounders, you at least need to become a contributor, and Justin Lane has not been that. So I would classify him as that. So you're not wrong with your thought process here, but let's work our way up faster here to the bigger numbers. First, we got Connor Hayward got 83. I don't know about you, that perplexed me.
Yeah, that was like, I don't want to disrespectful. Maybe. I mean, are we giving out 83? Are we giving out 83 already? Are we doing that? Especially to a tight end.
That was fat. But didn't Kobe Hamilton get 83?
Kobe Hamilton got 83 for sure, but he was a practice squad kid, so it wasn't like,
it wasn't like he was going to be there forever.
Exactly. You expect that. I don't know. Well, actually, do you expect Connor Hayward to make the roster? Because I do. I think.
Oh, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, we're on the same page there. I thought he was the lock of the draft and was like the free space on the bingo card if you were trying to do like predicting the Steeler draft.
Oh
yeah. You knew they were going to take Connor Hayward at some point.
Absolutely.
And he's going to make the roster. So he's got, I felt like a 40 number for Connor because he's got a tight end, fullback kind of,
right. That kind of build.
Switcheroo type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a number in the 40s would have been better. 83 is a good number. It's just, I just feel like it's too soon. It'd been like if they gave Kenny Pickett 7. It's like, all right, that's a little too soon. Come on.
Right. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Whoa.
I did find it funny. Connor Hayward was like, he took it a little too far, and he was like, maybe they'll retire the jersey someday, and then I'll have to give it up. And I was like,
Yo,
The Steelers don't do that. Like if it took Joe Green forever to get his jersey retired, like do you understand like how much would have to happen for Heath Miller would have to like go and like defeat Russia and Ukraine or something. Like he would have to like do some crazy stuff for them to do that. Like Heath Miller's beloved forever, beloved by the Steelers organization, Steeler Nation. That ain't happening.
It should only 83 should be given out only to like, you know, the 90th player on your 90-man roster, right? Someone who, you know, who eventually they're going to have to give that number up at the end of it when they're going to make the roster. Hayward, I would imagine, is not giving up 83, and he's going to actually wear it during the season, which is going to be strange.
I could totally see that happening. Let's move up to the guy above him, and this is where it starts to get interesting.
Yeah,
Calvin Austin III gets 19. Now, Tony. This is where it comes to me, and I'm like, wait a second, like dang, like Juju just went out the door, and y'all replaced him with a speedster.
Yeah, and you know this goes back to the idea like they did this last year with Pouncey. You know, when Pouncey walked out the door, they're like, all right, Pouncey, peace. Anyway, we're gonna give this kid 53. Your number is gonna be worn by your replacement. Yeah, so they kind of set the tone for this a year ago. I don't hate 19 for Calvin Austin, but you know, Calvin Austin, a little speedster.
He should have had a single number.
He should have. And I you know me, I hate the single digit thing. I never want a Steeler to wear single digits outside.
I loved it on him.
Yeah, exactly. But however, I will make an exception for Calvin Austin. There's just not a lot of single digits left, though. I think that were, you know, that could have fit. Like he could have worn, I guess, 9 is Boswell. 9 is
Boswell. No.
Yeah, what am I talking about? So it could have been what, 4 or 3 or 1.
1, yeah.
Yeah, 2 would be a good number. Maybe he'll wear 2 in the regular season because as we talked about before, 2 will not be on the roster when it comes to the 53.
That'll be interesting. But I just think it's also interesting because it's like, you know, you tried that with replacing Pouncey, and maybe that was, but it worked in the opposite effect because Kendrick Green did not live up to anything that Pouncey was. But so maybe you're trying to double down and say Calvin Austin, he'll be so good that maybe he makes you forget about Juju. I don't know. It's just
what was Quadri Henderson's number at Pitt? Because Calvin Austin, I think, fits like the Quadri Henderson and Matt Canada's offense to a T.
I want to say,
and I think he was 83, if I remember right.
I want to say that he was 11.
Oh, is he 11?
Well, let me grab that real quick. You know, honestly, he was 10. He was 10. I was close.
Now that number's taken by a great player right now.
Look at you with the Mitch Trubisky.
Taken by a great player right now. Can't have that one. It's reserved.
But the point being, 19's funny. Now let's keep moving up the list here. 98 goes to DeMarvin Leal. Yeah, I actually don't have a problem with that. I kind of like 98 being a D lineman. I know Vince Williams has had it, but this is acceptable.
This one is acceptable. Yeah, and like I said, like you could have switched Mark Robinson and Leal around, and I would have been fine with it, and it would have fit the kind of like you know your exact replacement gets your number. But yeah, I'm fine with this. 98's a perfectly fine defensive line number.
I mean, Big Snack was 98 for so long, and this guy is going to be asked to be Big Snack. But if you could be a contributor on the defensive line, 98's a good fit. All right, moving up here, and this is probably the one that you want to talk about the most. Second round pick, the new star receiver of the team, looks like he's trying to become wide receiver 1, not just the Steelers, not just to the AFC North, but of the NFL. George Pickens, and they give him number 14. This man texted me as soon as this happened, with how mad he was that they did this, giving him the Lima Swede number. Tony, the floor is yours.
It's unbelievable. And I tweeted this, and people said, oh, you know, 14 is not a bad number. You know, Stephon Diggs wears 14. DK Metcalf wears 14. Chris Godwin wears 14. That is true. 14 is a perfectly fine wide receiver number. It's a perfectly fine number around the National Football League. But in Pittsburgh, of all places, you do not give out the number 14. Even look, and look, there are probably kids who watch a show that are, you know, they're in high school, right? And they don't remember any of the 14s we're talking about, Chris. The only 14 that they probably remember is Ray McLeod from a year ago. And Ray wasn't a bad player, but Ray did get memed on at the end of last year. I mean, Ray, you know, it was funny when he got, you know, 15 targets a game at the end of last season for whatever reason. Ray was a fine player. That's fine. But let me take you back to 2008. When the Steelers drafted a second-round pick out of Texas, a wide receiver who every Steeler fan convinced themselves was going to be the next Plaxico Burress. He was going to be an absolute superstar, or at least I convinced myself of that. And Lima Swede was maybe the worst draft pick of Kevin Colbert's career, considering where he got drafted like this as a second-round pick and his productivity on the field. He,
Worse.
I believe, he had 8 catches in his entire career. And that shouldn't surprise anyone, given that everything we remember Limas Sweed is about his drops, and especially that drop in the AFC Championship game. He was an out-and-out disaster. And if that's not bad enough, Chris, let me take you back to my first memory as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, 1995. Little Tony is 10 years old.
Oh, gosh.
Me and my dad are watching Super Bowl 30 together. I have already suffered through watching this team lose to Stan Humphries in the AFC Championship game. And then the next year they beat Jim Harbaugh and the Colts after surviving that last second Hail Mary. And they're playing against the Cowboys, who I knew at the time. And all my friends told me there's no way your Steelers are going to beat the Cowboys because the Cowboys were the dynasty. And the Steelers had them. And, I mean, Sean Payton gets all the love for the surprise onside kick. Oh, give me a break, Sean Payton. That's Bill Cowher's move, baby.
That is Bill Cowher's move.
And then you have Neil O'Donnell throw 2 of the stupidest interceptions you will ever see in an NFL game. And so from that point, okay, you have Neil O'Donnell wearing 14 and then Limas Sweed wearing 14. That's it. They don't retire numbers in Pittsburgh. Well, I got one number, Mr. Rooney, that you need to remove from all players. Never again can we give this number out. It's cursed. I'm sorry. It's cursed in Pittsburgh. And to give it to all players in this draft, but George Pickens, Chris, we didn't talk about George Pickens before. He's my wide receiver 1 in the class.
Whoa.
I like this kid. I like this kid more than Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Get all those guys out. I love George Pickens. And so my only hope is in a very Minkah Fitzpatrick way that George Pickens can overcome what is an atrocious number to give them, especially considering its history in Pittsburgh. No, this is.
I just want to point out that you did say it about Minkah Fitzpatrick, and
that's right.
He's doing pretty well right now.
It is. You
said 39 was not a safety number.
It's not. But it is the mark of a great with a capital G player that you can overcome your number. Right? Marlon Humphrey in Baltimore. We've talked about this, right? 44 is what Marlon Humphrey wears, and he's one of the best corners in the league. So I hope that 14 is not the curse that it's been in the past for Steeler players, but not a good number, not the ideal number to give to Pickens.
For the history buffs, Limas Sweed wore it in 08-09. Before him, a guy named Tom Ruin in 2002.
Tom Ruin, yeah, that's right. Yep, that makes sense.
Shane Edge in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Neil O'Donnell from 90 to 95. Todd Blackledge from 80.
Todd Blackledge. Oh yeah, Steeler
from 88 to 89. From Todd Blackledge in 88 to 89. You have to go all the way back to 1970 to find a person who wore it for a single year in Allen Watson. And that just shows you 14 was never even touched, apparently, during the great years of the 70s. At least
the Steelers have. Okay, the Steelers have never won a Super Bowl with a 14 on their roster. They're doomed.
Well, no, they did because they won with Limas Sweed.
Oh, they did win with Limas. All right, never mind. Crisis averted. We were close, guys. It was close.
Tony, you can't make me laugh this hard when I'm having COVID, man.
I love these segments. I love how ridiculous these segments are.
All right. So we apologize for how stupid we are being, but this is what we do.
I don't. Chris does.
Last one, Kenny Pickett, number 8. What you thought?
I mean, it's his number. Not only is it his number, but he follows in a long line of great quarterbacks in Pittsburgh to wear the number 8.
So don't you stop.
Yeah. So we had T-Gun. Now we have K-Gun. I love it. Let's go, Kenny. I'm all in.
K-Gun. All right. We're done. We allowed Tony to do his ranting. I wanted to get him to keep up the tradition of the Locked On Steelers podcast. And surely you delivered, unlike anyone else could, on the subject of jersey numbers, and did explain why the Steelers have never won with the number 14 on their roster, except the time that they did.
Except the time that they did, in spite of him, which was imagine how much, imagine, the stress or the stress-free day every Steeler fan could have had that day. If at the end of the first half, he just catches a walk-in touchdown, the Steelers go up, I believe it would have been 23-3 at that point.
But then we never get Troy's legendary pick 6. And the feeling that was true. That might have been that might be the greatest Heinz Field moment ever.
You're right. But here's the thing, Chris. It's just been so long in Pittsburgh. Like, do we even remember what a blowout feels like as Steeler fans? Like, what does it feel like to blow out another team? I don't even remember.
I don't know either, man. It's been a long time. We got to take it back a sec. We're gonna go back to talking about where these rankings are, having them preseason. But first, we're gonna talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. This is a place where you can take some of these FBI rankings and see if you can make some money off of them, because that's how they're being aligned with a lot of the betting. So BetOnline.net is your number one source for all betting stats and sports information. That's where you go if you want to learn about what's going on and put some money down with BetOnline.ag. But find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's NBA playoffs that are now in the conference finals, the Stanley Cup playoffs, which now the Pittsburgh Penguins are out, sad, and the Major League Baseball season, which is well underway, all of which you can make money, you can bet money, you can learn about how to bet money on at betonline.net, which is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action when you visit betonline.net, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Tony Serino, who is done ranting about jersey numbers.
For now, yeah, sure.
I'm sure we'll hear about it later. We will eventually do our jersey power rankings of which to buy, but that's for training camp. We save that for later, when we get closer to the start of the actual training camp, of which to buy and what's the most. We'll get to those rules later.
Mitch Trubisky number 1, but 2 through 4 will
don't
be,
you
2 through
start.
5 will be interesting.
Don't you start.
Mitch,
don't do it.
Mitch number 1, yeah.
Anyways, I want to talk more about these FPI rankings, and not just where it relates with the Steelers, but we're looking at teams here that are up in the ranks. The Buffalo Bills were the number 1 team. They had a 9.4 FPI. That was the Green Bay Packers with an 8.8. The Rams with a 7.7. The Chiefs with a 7.6. Buccaneers with 7.4. Then you got the Cowboys, Chargers, and then this, and like all of those. I'm like, okay, I get it. The Cowboys may be a little too hot, but I get the quarterbacks, the top play, the rosters. You're excited there. The Chargers you're excited about. But then it gets wonky for me, because then you just jump the Indianapolis Colts up with a 6.2.
What do you mean?
Don't you do this?
What do you mean?
I don't know. You're Matt Ryan lover.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Matt Ryan bump, baby. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised they aren't higher, to be honest with you. I mean, top 5 team in my book. But anyway.
For those who don't know the
you
joke,
set that up.
I did.
You did.
I wanted you to do this.
Yeah.
And you fell right into it. But for those who don't know, Tony used to say that Matt Ryan was a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger.
No.
And this is again where I try to help you guys. You think I hate Ben Roethlisberger? This guy over here.
Specific to only the 2018 season, I believe. But
semantics.
Yeah, semantics. Yeah, exactly.
But I look at this, and this is how they have the AFC North teams ranked too. The Browns are the number 1 ranked FPI team according to ESPN, followed by the Ravens, both at 3.5 and 3.3. And then several steps below them, you have the Broncos are at a 3.3. What are they doing there?
Yeah.
Vikings. The Vikings at a 3.2. What are they doing there? Raiders, I get. I'm actually kind of with the Raiders this year. The Patriots, meh. Then you have the Bengals at a 1.1. So you're looking at basically the ESPN looking at the division of going Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers, and we still don't even know if Deshaun Watson's going to play this season.
They take into account that he will play the entire season. That's what this ranking. The guy said that already. He said, "Look, I because we don't know what that suspension is going to be, they just have to go into the assumption that he will play." But I think you and I both know, very unlikely.
That's not going to happen as clean as they think it's going to be. But
yeah,
here's my thing about this. I'm with the Bengals not having that many wins, because I'm on record. I say it a lot. I don't think the Bengals are going to repeat as AFC champions this year. I think that they're going to get back to the playoffs. I think they'll compete for the division again. But I think they're going to get smacked up a lot this year, and they're going to be looking around being like, "Hey, wait a minute. Why is everyone playing it so hard now?" Because people didn't do that before, because they were the doormat Bengals, and they caught a lot of teams by surprise. Yeah. Now everyone's going to be looking for them. They had a lot of things go in their favor during that playoff run. I think they're going to have a lot of things come back to bite them, and you'll see them drop down a bit. But I just don't buy into the Browns going even ahead of the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens last year, with all the players that they had hurt, Lamar Jackson's going to be there. They had a really good draft. Kyle Hamilton's coming in. It just seems like, to me, they should be the number 1 team, at least in the FPI. And this is even a guy who says the Steelers should be in this mix a lot more.
Well, that is okay. That is the craziest part of this is that, while I will agree with FPI that, yeah, I mean, the Steelers are probably the fourth most talented team. If you said that Deshaun Watson's not going to get suspended for a single game, then I would tell you that.
That would change things.
Yeah. Then I would say the Steelers are the fourth most talented team in the division. Fine. I mean, I'll admit to that. But to say that it's, it goes Browns, then Ravens, then small gap to the Bengals, then there's an 8.6 point gap between the Bengals and the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers would be an 8-point underdog, almost a 9-point underdog to the Bengals, and over 10-point underdog to both the Browns and Ravens on a neutral field. Come on, that is absolutely crazy to me.
And especially when you think about last year, the Steelers swept the Ravens. They swept the Browns, and with limited quarterback play.
Now, the Ravens, look, in fairness, the Ravens they did have. Cool. They had a JV squad at the end of the year. So the second one, I'll give them, they were so injured. But that first one, they had Lamar. They had Mark Andrews. Marlon Humphrey played for that entire game. He got hurt on the very, very last play of that game. So yeah, no asterisk by that one.
No asterisk there. And here's my thing with the Browns. Like, okay, you want to say the Browns, well, they got Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry, a 10-point favorite.
Yeah,
that's why you still lose me, because I look at the Steelers and I say, and really I think, what's it, an 11-point favorite actually when you look at it. That's a lot of points to give anybody in a divisional matchup. Like, I would, if the situations were reversed, even if the Browns were the Browns of old, I wouldn't give the Steelers 11 points on them. Like, it's just like, that's dangerous betting money that you're talking about right there. So for my looking at this, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. I still don't get how the Vikings are there above the Bengals or the Titans. I get that, but I would put the Steelers, I would give them at least like a 5-point bump in this. I'd put them in the you could say negative 2.5. That's a fair range, because that still puts them below the Dolphins, and I think that's a little bit much too. But that puts them ahead of the Giants, ahead of the Lions, ahead of the Niners, ahead of the Panthers. A lot of these teams that I think that they should be able to handle. I truly think the Steelers are going to bang with most of their opponents next year. I think they're going to be right neck and neck with a lot of teams. There's going to be some games that probably come out that probably lose their focus, or they turn into routes for some quarterbacking mistakes at some point. But I truly see with this defense, unless because here's my thing, if they're counting that Deshaun Watson's going to be there, then they got to count that Stephon Tuitt's going to be there, and that everyone's going to be there, and everyone's going to be fine. And if you're doing that, I'm sorry, I don't see a way how the Steelers are this terrible team that finishes, if we're looking at 26, quick math here, that's the 7th overall pick. That's what they're projecting them here. And that's just not who the Steelers I think are right now.
So it's interesting you say that they're, because they have the 26th best team in the NFL. So I went and looked at what Vegas has them, because Vegas has their win totals out now. So you can look at where everyone is projected to finish as far as their record. Vegas also has the Steelers around this point. They have them at 7.5 wins is the over-under for the Steelers. And that puts them right around. It's tied with Washington and a couple other teams at 7.5. So I'm with you though. I would have expected the Steelers this year to be at that kind of, like you said, the 18 to 21 range, right? That clump of teams with the Eagles, Saints, Commanders, and Dolphins probably felt more like where the Steelers should be. But yeah, they're here. They are down at 26. You talk about the defense there and whether or not this team, whether or not they can be a dominant defense again. I wonder though whether or not they can continue to win games the way that they did last year. Where it was like close at the end of games and kind of being the more mentally strong team at the end of games and not screwing it up for themselves. And we talked about Ben Roethlisberger last year and how much the quarterback is going to be an improvement to that. But they are, if the Steelers aren't going to be better on a play-to-play basis offensively, meaning that maybe they can actually play with some leads this year. Who knew you could actually take the lead in a football game and then
really no.
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing that you're allowed to do in the NFL. I don't know if Matt Canada or them know that, but you can. You are allowed to score in the first quarter. So let's say they did that. Then I think they'd be fine overall. But if they're going to be an offense that's going to continue to struggle and try to win games by not screwing it up and then getting late touchdowns, that is where I could see them kind of finishing the year more around where ESPN thinks they will. Because I don't know that whether it's Mitch or Kenny that they're going to be as clutch at the end of games as Ben was. I mean, I'll give Ben
that I agree with.
Yeah. There's one thing I'll give Ben credit for last year is he didn't turn the ball over nearly as much as he had in his career, and he was very clutch at the end of games. in not turning it over and getting them some late scores.
And his way of being clutch was just not panicking. Like, he wouldn't
Right.
make amazing throws. He would just do the basics. And when it came to those points, and this is very real, and this is something that Ben Roethlisberger never lost. When the crunch time happens, you see players, the pressure mounts and like they're feeling it. And that's when you see them start to make mistakes that are uncharacteristic. Ben Roethlisberger would be right here. And like, if the Steelers had a chance to win a game, he would give you a shot. And that's where he was there. And that's where I do think the Steelers could be in trouble. But I'm not so sure that they needed to be in that situation. So many of those games like the Bills game where they crushed them defensively. Those could have been games where the Steelers needed to score more than 7 points in the first half. Or I think they scored less than that against the Bills in the first half, but they averaged 7 points in the first half all season long. This is where I think that the difference will be. Like, they might not, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett might not have the clutch factor. Well, though I will say at Pitt, Kenny Pickett definitely had a clutch factor. As you were a Pitt fan, you saw that all last year, and that doesn't always translate to the pros. So I'm not saying it's going to, but I am saying that if they can simply not be the worst first half offense in the NFL,
right,
maybe they won't be in the position where they need the late game heroics. But hey, that's always been a big part of who Ben Roethlisberger was, even before he was in his last year of his NFL career.
Yeah, because you're going to hear, look, if for any Steeler fan out there, if you're going to listen to people like Bill Barnwell or I forget the guy's name at Football Outsiders, or Ben Baldwin, all these people are going to they're going to point to one thing about the Steelers from 2021, and they're going to say that 2022 they're going to regress, and that's going to be their win total or their win percentage in one-score games. They're going to say the Steelers are going to regress. They're going to regress in that area, and that may be true. But like Chris said, the number of one-score games the Steelers are playing in, that number needs to come down. And the way that number needs to come down is not by getting blown out, but it's by actually scoring a little bit and not being in so many games that are close at the end. If this offense can improve, not to like a top 5 offense, but just a top 20, top 15 type of offense, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off of this team at the end of games to win late like they had to do last year.
Absolutely. It's gonna be fun to see how that happens, if it does happen here with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I do think that's a big factor. Avoid those one-score games, because when you do, you give yourself a much better chance to win. You're giving your defense much more space to protect, and that's just something the Steelers didn't have a lot of last year. But again, that's why I think people should be higher on the Steelers. They were able to maintain a winning record even with that being a problem. So, with that being said, we got to cut it up. We were way over our time here, but Tony, thanks so much for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. You're always a blessing here. Also, I want to reiterate something just for the call lines. People, if you're new to the show and you haven't seen it, or if you forgot about it, we do have a call line where you can call into the show, ask us questions that will get you on the air. The number to call in is 412-223-6644. Again, that's 412-223-6644. You can also email losteelerstopicbag@gmail.com if you're international and don't want to call, but leave a voicemail there with your name and where you're from, and we will try to get you on the show with your questions so that myself and whoever's the guest that day can talk about your issues. Thank you very much, Tony, for checking in. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country, and you can find me on AFC North Talk. It is a YouTube show all about the AFC North, so give that a watch on YouTube. Search AFC North Talk. We will come up. We are live all summer long. We're going to be talking position rankings from here on out. Sure to be a very controversial topic when I rank the Steelers number 1 in everything. Every single category, starting with Mitch Trubisky.
That's oh God. Okay. That's my boy. That's why we bring him on this show. Tony, thanks so much for joining us. It's a lot of fun to have you here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for sticking with us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. We thank everyone who checked us out, whether it was on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, or YouTube. If you watch this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus episodes and our extra content whenever we have breaking news updates. We thank you for checking us out. Remember, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, and you get a shout out at the end of the show. Back tomorrow, we got Josh Taylor back on the show. I got a defensive question for him because there's something that Mike Tomlin said this weekend that I thought was interesting, and there's something I want to get to Josh about on it. We'll talk about that and more on the Locked On Steelers podcast later this week.